Hello, everyone. I'm Cassandra Eve of Whole Woman, and I work with supporting women in many different ways to deepen their own intimacy with themselves and with their wounding. And I'm here today with Shelly Sharon, who's a therapeutic coach who specializes in the mother wound. And that is what we are exploring today, the mother wound. So would you like to expand on your work, Shelley, to start?
Thank you. Yes, and just to say that I'm really happy to be here and talk about something that I'm really passionate about and that you and I have in common from different angles, which I know we'll get into a bit later. So, I'm a therapeutic coach for healing the mother wound, which means that I work with women who feel ready to go beyond the troubling mom story or a difficult experience with their mother and find deeper levels of healing so they can show up in the world and in the relationships with the relationship with themselves feeling appreciated, loved, and seen. So the focus of my work is directed at women who had both difficult experience with their own mother, but also perhaps inherited limiting beliefs that came from what it actually means to be a woman in the world that sometimes comes in a very latent form through our maternal ancestry.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. So we're going to look first at what is the mother wound to endeavor to define that. And in my work as an astrologer and as a coach and a retreat facilitator, I always focus on the biggest picture coming down to the personal. So if I look at the mother wound from that perspective, I would state, and it's a big statement, that we all have a mother wound because the earth is our mother. She gives us our body in terms of, just on a very practical sense, when a woman is pregnant, the food that she eats and the way that she takes care of herself come from the earth itself. Yeah, many layered, obviously, journey with that, because a woman who's pregnant also brings in her motherline ancestry. So that's another level of the mother wound that I see, that we're all wounded in that disconnection from earth that we're seeing in our environmental challenges at the moment, and also in the way that our collective systems operate in a suppression, a denial perhaps of the feminine values of receptivity, care, and love. But looking at it on a personal level, it's about our lack of intimacy with ourselves, our lack of love for ourselves, our lack of trust in ourselves, that in the ideal comes from the mother-baby relationship, that we're held in that loving, supported, safe, secure space that gives us the room to grow in a healthy way. And of course, that's the ideal. Now, in my work, there are various archetypes, feminine archetypes, that point specifically towards the mother wound. And that's on both an individual level, a very personal level, the most personal level, and the broadest sense as well. So we have the moon, and the moon archetypally represents mother and child. And it's a very personal sense of belonging, safety, security, emotional connection. That, as I said, in an ideal scenario, we receive that from the initial nurturing care that we might receive. Then there is also an archetype known as Black Moon Lilith, Black Moon rather than Moon. And she is a dark feminine archetype that particularly leads us towards our soul knowledge, our soul knowing that we are all wounded, that we receive that and we express that in a specifically personal way. And particularly Lilith in the chart will point us towards the experiences of rejection, the experiences of shame and humiliation that don't make our behavior wrong, but are actually a deep wounding to our sense of self and our sense of belonging to ourselves. And then also we have a triple archetype, the maiden, mother, crone, that looks at the processes of a woman's life, the evolutionary journey from the innocence of maiden, the young girl, young woman, into the role of mother, whatever that means, whether you're a physical mother or not, and then towards the energy of crone or elder or shamanka. And that process that takes us through a woman's life helps us to understand that journey of evolution, that processing that we go through, that literally requires us to face our losses and to embody into a deepening expression of who we are as a woman within those archetypes of the sacred feminine. So I work two ways, if you like, with that mother wound in terms of from the very, very personal to the broadest, to the divine feminine, and from that divine feminine with her archetypes into our women's journey. And that process is about a healthy embodiment. Mm-hmm. So for you, Shelly, what is the mother wound? What's at the core of that for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'll start by defining the way that I define the mother wound. And I'd like to say, Cassandra, that there are so many gems in what you shared that I think would be beneficial to open them up a little bit and to expand on that definition. So I hope I remember everything. The way that I define the mother wound is that it's like a friction or an injury in your emotional body that comes from the dynamic with your mother. So whether because of your mother's personality, her condition, and even inherited ancestral wounds, there has been a consistent lack of support for your needs, for who you are. And that has led to cultivating a set of limiting beliefs and patterns of being. So there is a wound there. There is a wound in the relationship between you and yourself, between you and others, and you and the world. So my work focuses on the personal dimension of the mother wound. That is very much true. I have seen through my coaching practice, through my groups, the retreats that I lead, the conversations I have in social media, that if we are not settled in our personhood, in our personal dimensions, it's very difficult for us to have attention and resources to look in broader perspectives on what it actually means to heal the mother wound in a more global way. But I do, if you notice, include and consider the ancestral wound in the way that we cultivate a sense of self, because we cannot detach that. So that is the personal dimension of the mother wound. But there are other dimensions that I definitely relate to. So for example, particularly in my coaching group, excuse me, there is a conversation with the social and the political dimension of the wound. So what does it actually mean to be a woman in our society today? What does it actually mean to be in a woman's body? Yeah, that's the political aspect as well of that in our society today. And there is the other dimension, which is the relationship with Mother Earth, just like as you have mentioned, the pollution that we live in, the way that we treat the planet's resources, the way that we perceive them, the way that we use them, are all interacting with the environmental and the earth mother wound. And then there is the archetypal mother wound. So how do we actually embody, or what kind of relationship we have with our understanding of the feminine values, the feminine body, the feminine qualities? So it's kind of multi-layered. But what I notice is that if we have a very troubling relationship with who we are, with who I am, with how I can, as you mentioned, feel belong, with how can I trust myself, how can I trust my judgment, how can I trust my intuition, then the majority of our attention and the majority of our resources will be invested in what is happening to us in day to day. And also what I've noticed, and I can attest to that in my life. So when I started, my beginning was with meditation practice, and my meditation teacher said after quite a few years, oh, you can step into being a Dharma teacher, a meditation teacher. And I felt like, no. I don't have anything to give. It's too much of responsibility. I can't do that. And it took me quite a few years. And in these years, what I did was I was taking care of my relationship to myself, then my relationship with others, until I've reached a point where I felt like, yeah, I can turn my gaze into my relationship with the world. What is the kind of public space that I'm taking? What is the public space that I'm feeling comfortable taking, which is where the mother wound healing took that more global and more collective space. So there was one particular aspect that, in addition, that I would like to relate to in what you brought in the archetypes and the environment and the astrology perspective on how we look at the mother wound, and that we all have a mother wound. We all have a mother wound, and it varies to different degrees and different intensities, which is again where our personal story takes a very particular kind of role and significance. And I'm saying that in particular because I know that the mother wound can feel very uncomfortable to talk about, to listen to read about, because there is a very great taboo around that. So being a woman living in a patriarchal society, we know that there are a lot of limitations that we work with and against. So even to just consider that, to just consider what it means to, for example, I always give that example. I don't know of many women who walk towards their car or public transportation at night and don't have some tension in their body, their iPhone ready, and their keys to the car ready. And I can see you nodding, Cassandra. There is a very fundamental experience to what it really means to live in a woman's body. And the wound lies even just there, just in that membrane of what it means to be a woman in a patriarchal society. And there is also a healing available to all of us when we begin to weave in all these dimensions together and look at the significance of our personal role, of our personal story, and how it played out in our life. Does that make sense?
Absolutely it does. And thank you for sharing, in that many layered way. And it was interesting because your journey with spirituality in some ways mirrored mine, except that I was seeing I lived in spiritual community for 20 years, 13 years in one particular community. And through that can see, through your reflection as well, can see, for me, it's always been both and. There's been that that deepening into that broader spiritual dimension and deepening embodiment of my consciousness, yeah, and the understanding that who I truly am is beyond and in this body having a human experience. And in that, my mother wounding would also come up, because living in community is a very intimate experience. You know, you get to face yourself through the mirror of the master and the mirror of your, you know, the people that you're sharing your life with in a very intense way. It's kind of immediately there. So there was this constant exploring what that is, even to the point of facing and embracing and challenging the patriarchal wounding that is in that system, that hierarchical system of a master and devotees. So yeah, it was this journey of dancing between my broader consciousness, my divine being, if you like, and my humanness, and integrating the two. Excuse me. That brought me to this point of now my focus being embodiment, and embodiment from that my womanness into the feminine, and the feminine into my womanness. And do we ever fully integrate that while in a body? That's the biggest question of all, because, you know, my belief and my experience shows me that there is this dance in that between the archetypal loving mother and the archetypal fierce mother of authenticity and integrity. So the one who will, you know, the mother, little story here that might amuse you, that, you know, is kind of part of that journey of mothering. When the seagull mothers lay their eggs, and then they're devoted, both mother and father, to the feeding of chicks, there gets to a point after they fledged when they stop. They just stop. They stop feeding them. And you can see them here down on the seafront. The chicks follow the parents around, primarily the mother, and they will squawk, 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 squawk until the mother turns her back. And the chick will keep following the mother around, but the mother is constantly on the move, giving her back to the chick. So there is that dimension to the mother wounding as well, that there is a natural disconnection that has to happen for us to be in our maturing journey. So we have that dynamic, that dance between the light and the dark, the all-loving and the death-wielding aspect of the feminine, which can work on a psychological, even on a spiritual level.
Yeah, and I think perhaps here it's really important to go back and to have some clarity or discernment about what is really a wound, because I work with many women who are mothers as well. And often they are very concerned that they don't want to be with they don't want to wound their daughters like they have been wounded by their mother. So there is a necessary separation from the all-loving mother, the all-feeding mother, in order to be able to step up into our maturity. And we can see that a lot, for example, in fairy tales. I work a lot with folklores and with fairy tales and with dreams, because I believe that like you, the archetypal world and the symbolic world carries an infinite across space, across borders, across time message. And so if you look at fairy tales, for example, we always have the stepmother. Why the stepmother? Why does the mother need to die? Why is it that the stepmother takes on the role to be the mean one, to be the one that's injuring us, the one that sends us into exile, who's willing to drop us in the midst of the forest without any food and all the rest of it? It's because in the fairy tales there is that embodiment of both the dark and the light, as you've mentioned, that embodiment of the mother cannot and is not supposed to give me everything that I need in this life. Yeah, my best friend, whom just visited me, and we've been really close friends for 25 years, she gives me a lot. She cannot give me everything that I need. My partner, whom I always refer to as my soul partner, we have a very beautiful and very deep relationship, very good friendship, very beautiful love. He cannot provide for all my needs. My mother couldn't have, your mother couldn't have provided for all your needs. When does the wound start? When there is a consistent lack of support for your needs and your true nature. And I want to go back to what you said at the beginning about your personal journey. I don't believe, and take love, for example, self-love. I know that this is something that we've had a conversation before. What self-love really is, what does it mean to really take care of yourself, what self-care is. I don't believe that when we come to love, for example, the unmeasurable, as they're called in Buddhism, the unmeasurable qualities like love and creativity and friendships and so on, that there is a linear relationship. So one can understand and embody love by loving others because they cannot love themselves, but they have love in themselves. And they need to learn how to express that, and they need to have the space to express that. And through loving others, there is that reciprocity and that feedback of like, oh, somehow I'm learning how to love myself. And in the same way, the healing of the mother wound can have the both and aspect, as you refer to. It's really what we feel more and most intuitive with. What's the next step is also important, but I want to give that acknowledgement that we can start at any point and at any level and from whichever door that we feel called for. And for some people, let's take, for example, activists, who are very much invested and concerned about more collective and global dimensions of wounding, different kinds of wounding. Their love goes into those spheres, and from that, there is a learning that the body learns something from that movement, and the love comes inwardly. Now, one of the most common manifestations of the mother wound is that women don't really know how to love themselves. They don't really know how to take that further step and to bring that integration, because loving others is not only a capacity, not only a gift, but also an obligation. You have to love others. You cannot love yourself. If you love yourself, you're selfish. That sense of guilt is something that many women with the mother wound, many women who deal with the mother wound, they experience on a very subtle and daily level. Yeah. So taking that next step of integrating, of adding other layers, of learning from how to love yourself is already maybe even a red light or a green light that any woman can ask herself, okay, yeah, I know how to love others. I've become really good at being compassionate, understanding, embracing. Did I learn something from that on how I can begin to direct that towards myself? Did I learn something from that I can say, oh, I am really good at that? Even just saying that and feeling proud at that, feeling, oh yeah, I'm good at that. I can do that. So when we say I can do that, what else can we step into that before we felt the door was closed or that we were not enough, it was too limited. So there is that integration that leads into further unfolding. And so what I love that story, and I love stories from nature. And it's so beautiful to see that particular aspect that you brought in.
Mm.
The mother is there in a certain kind of distance. Yeah. So for example, one of the more latent mother wounds, more difficult to talk about, is that the mother is a child. And she needs her daughter to be her best friend. She needs her daughter to reconfirm her. And she's always there for the daughter. She's always encouraging. She wants to know everything that happens in her life. She's like her best friend. And the daughter grows up to feel like, how can I do that to my mother? I can't say anything. I mean, she gives me everything that I ask for. She's always there for me. She's like my best friend. But no, she hasn't kept that needed distance because she's your mother. She's not your best friend. You can be friends with your mother. You can have good relationship with your mother, but she's not your best friend. And that sense of duty, that sense of obligation to serve your mother, otherwise something, you feel like a disaster is happening within you. You feel like something deeply wrong happens in your body, and it's so uncomfortable, and you really find it difficult to put words into that because all that has started in a very pre-verbal state. You got the impression that it's not only that your mother is there for you, but you are there for your mother. And this is where many women that I work with find it very difficult to come into to kind of even grasp, like, oh yeah, of course. And lastly, you brought up this very beautiful and very deep question about whether there is an end to the mother wound. And what I feel and what I think about that is that it has these two layers, these two ways, and again, kind of resonant with what you brought in, the personal and the more global one. To our personal story, to our personal wound, I believe that there is some form of an end. I can tell you, for example, that I've started working with a therapist after years that I have been without a therapist, after years of feeling in a very good place with my mother. I grew up with a mother who is mentally ill. I never really had a mother. I've experienced neglect. I've experienced a horrific abandonment when I was 16, when my mother just ran away from home. I always say I was the teenager and my mother was the one who ran away from home. I've had quite tough experiences with my mother. And so I've had very charged and very difficult emotions towards her, towards myself. And after many years of doing a lot of meditative work with very skilled teachers, a lot of shamanic work, a lot of therapy, I've come to a place where I could feel really good within myself and really healed with the story with my mother. I can tell you something that many women experience, and they're afraid of talking about that. I could feel real hatred towards my mother. I wished her dead. And I'm now in a place where I feel deep compassion and a lot of love for my mother, in spite of my personal story with her. And some very, very thin, subtle layers of my personal story are resurfacing now, asking me, and this is interesting, to heal them for the sake of my public sphere, my public appearances, my public embodiment. So I do believe that in terms of our personal story, we can reach a state where it's not a dead end. And I think the word dead is really relevant here, because I think that we keep on working until our last breath, or maybe more exact to say, we keep on evolving and we keep on growing and we keep on learning until our last exhale. So that comes back to what you said, Cassandra, that in terms of our archetypes, in terms of our soul information, our soul lessons, we will keep on moving forward, but it will have a completely different tonus of charged feelings. It will have a completely different intention and goals. It will have a completely different texture and movement and relationships. It really, really, really is like a living tissue.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, looking back at what I said through what you've also shared, I see for sure there is this place where there is that sense of personal integration that a woman can experience. And as you say, the layers get more and more subtle, and life provides the doors and the opportunities to both evolve and grow in that, and also to go deeper into that wounding for the sake of the whole, as you described. It becomes less and less and less personal. And I just would like to finish on this particular theme in terms of sharing a story about being a mother myself and my journey with my son. And there was a period in his life and my life when we were separated. He'd chosen to go off and do his quest to discover his manhood in his way. And I had no idea where he was in the world. And one Christmas, I was living in community and I was facing the mirror of that sense of parents and children, even though they were adult children, that sense of coming together and that sense of belonging and that sense of shared community, but from a family perspective rather than the spiritual family perspective. And I felt the wound emerging at a very, very deep level in me, that sense of lack, that sense of where is he? You know, that was the big theme, was where is he and how is he? And my consciousness dropped into a deeper place where I understood fully that what I was experiencing was the pain and wounding of every parent, every mother in a similar situation at Christmas. And there was something about that recognition that both deepened and broadened my own experience of the pain, but also of the comfort in that, in that bigger picture, that understanding of I'm not alone in this. This is a shared experience. And on some level, others are also experiencing and potentially transforming this. So again, you know, I'm coming to that both and that deeply, deeply personal experience, and yet that possibility of life, the divine, there's no word really for that, the great mother, bringing us that deep sense of comfort and belonging to something so much more than our person, that creates this bridge of integration with our personal and our impersonal. So just felt that was appropriate to share.
Yeah.
Just briefly, let's have a look at the resources that if the women watching this, or even the men, experience that they, or have the sense of that they have a mother wound, what resources can they turn to? How can they support themselves in that recognition, in opening up and going deeper into that if they choose to?
Yeah. So it's a good question, and I love the story that you shared, because it really touches on one of the resources that I can think of. I personally work almost solely with women. And I think it's a good point that you brought up, is doesn't matter, it doesn't mean to say that men don't have the mother wound, but it does have a different manifestation and a different movement in the way that it shapes us. And I like to say that I do what I'm good at and what I know, and my work is focused on working with women. So this is why the majority of my examples and my everything that I say relates to women. I thought it's an important point to bring up, to say it's not that to say that men don't have a mother wound. And your story really echoes one of the resources that we can use if you're not ready to work with a professional for whatever reason, because it feels too intimate, or resources of time and finances, whatever the reason is. One of the experiences that we have, the common experiences with the mother wound, is that sense of loneliness, because it's such an intimate dynamic with your mother. And it feels like a sacred dynamic, which it is. It is. And to have it somehow fractured feels like something deeply wrong has gone on. And as children, we really don't have the capacity to think, oh, this is not my fault. You know, that's her wound, that's her trauma, that's untreated. No, we take that on board on ourselves, because we really need our mother to function. We really need our mother to be there for us. So it's very instinctual to do whatever we can in order to ensure that she's there. And one of the things that we do very naturally is feel shame or guilt. And you're not alone. There are so many women who have similar experiences that could really understand you deep to the bone. So find communities or find groups. I have a coaching group for healing the mother wound, for example, where that is a very fitting place for not having necessarily that intimate space, but having a group of women where you know you're going to be understood. Nobody's going to say, oh, you have to move on and forgive your mother. You know, she's your mother after all. She's done so much for you. Another resource is reading. Yeah, read. There is not a lot of literature about the mother wound, but there is, and there is more that becomes available. So reading about mother-daughter relationship, reading about attachment, learning about attachment and what injured attachment does to your sense of self and to your body. That's another resource. And of course, working one-on-one with someone is an amazing resource, because it gives you the opportunity to experience a motherly relationship. Not to say that you need another mother, and nobody should or can be that for you, but there is an opportunity to heal a relationship that is with someone who is there for you, like in your Stiegel story, that they have your back, they're there for your well-being, and they've dealt with their own wound, they've dealt with their own trauma. They are available and free and skilled and resourced to be there for you. So I am always working with someone. I'm a great believer in this kind of relationship, and that's another resource that I think we all have, because there is just a plethora of good people who can support people today.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and I see that life will provide us with the opportunities when we're ready to face the fact that we have a mother wound. Then we can potentially open to the opportunities that come along. It's like life is the mirror and brings us potentially the groups, the people, the books, the resources that can support us. Our part in that is the willingness to engage in that where we can and at the right level for us at a particular time.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for this, sharing this conscious conversation
Thank you.
today, Shelley. I've really enjoyed it. And there will be information available at the end of this video if you would like to explore further Shelley's work or my own work with the mother wound and the divine feminine. Thank you for watching.